To the military world, the United States officially has 11 aircraft carriers. 11 floating war machines built to dominate any ocean on Earth. But here's the part nobody talks about. Some of those carriers can't even sail right now. One is heading toward retirement. Another is torn apart inside a shipyard. One has seen so many battles, the Navy is already preparing years of repairs for it. Yet somehow, they all still count, and that raises a dangerous question. If America's carrier fleet is supposed to be the backbone of global military power, then how does the Navy keep the number at 11, even when the real deployable fleet is far smaller? The answer begins with a loophole buried deep inside federal law. Under Title 10, Section 8062, any Navy is legally required to maintain no fewer than 11 operational aircraft carriers. The point here is the word operational. The law never clearly defines what that actually means, and the Navy has taken full advantage of that ambiguity for decades. Because as long as that law stands, a carrier in dry dock still counts. A carrier under repair for years still counts as one. Even a ship physically incapable of floating, not to talk of deployment, can still be labeled operational for the sole purpose of maintaining the fleet total. And that is where the illusion begins. As we speak, multiple carriers inside the American fleet are unavailable for combat at the same time, not because they are damaged or because the Navy abandoned them, but because nuclear-powered supercarriers are some of the most complicated machines ever built by human beings. They demand enormous maintenance cycles, constant repairs, and years of overhaul work that cannot be rushed no matter how badly the Navy wants them back at sea. And the worst thing is that they are super expensive to maintain. Take the USS Nimitz. Commissioned in 1975, she became the blueprint for an entire generation of nuclear supercarriers. For decades, the Nimitz represented American control at sea. Entire nations adjusted their foreign policy when that ship entered a region. But now, after half a century of service, the legendary carrier is reaching the end of its life. Earlier in 2026, she began her final voyage before decommissioning, which means she will never see combat again. Her reactors are nearing permanent shutdown. Her future is dismantlement. Yet she still counts toward the 11 carrier total of the U.S. Navy. And that alone tells you how carefully the numbers are being managed. But the deeper you go, the more fragile the fleet starts to look, and the more you know the actual ship count. The USS John C. Stennis entered what is called an ARCAW, a refueling and complex overhaul. This is not ordinary maintenance. Imagine tearing open a nuclear-powered massive floating city just to rebuild it from the inside out. The whole process takes years, and Stennis is behind schedule, not by a few weeks, for more than a year. That delay matters because the Navy only has one shipyard capable of performing this level of overhaul work on supercarriers, the Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia. One shipyard and many ships on queue, which means every delay creates a domino effect throughout the fleet. That domino effect is already happening. The USS Truman is preparing to enter the same overhaul process, but she cannot fully begin until Stennis clears the dock, one carrier waiting for another. Suddenly, the number 11 does not feel large anymore. It feels weak. Then comes the USS Reagan, another carrier trapped in maintenance, another carrier unavailable for immediate deployment. And then there is the Ford, the future of the fleet, the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built. When the USS Ford deployed for more than 300 consecutive days at sea, multiple headlines went wild on the endurance and Americans stand in sophisticated weaponry. It became the longest carrier deployment in generations, but beneath the celebration, Navy officials understood the hidden cost. Long deployments destroy readiness. Every extra day at sea comes with a hidden cost. Catapults wear down, radar systems overheat, elevators fail, metal fatigues. The longer a carrier stays deployed, the faster the clock starts ticking toward its next overhaul. And that's exactly what happened to the USS Ford. And the moment Ford returns home, the countdown begins. Maintenance, repairs, inspections. Another long period away from combat readiness, and she can be needed for redeployment at any time. The pressure to repair the ship hits more than the waves of the sea. Now pause for a second and count carefully. Nimitz is basically retired. Stennis is trapped inside overhaul. Truman is preparing to enter overhaul. Reagan is tied down in maintenance. Ford is still operational, but already committed to future repairs. 5 carriers, gone. Not destroyed, just unavailable, which quietly drops the real deployable fleet closer to 6. 6 carriers might still sound powerful until you remember the U.S. Navy doesn't defend one ocean, it defends all of them. During tensions with Iran this year, the U.S. surged multiple carrier warship groups into the Middle East all at once. Massive firepower flooded the region. Hundreds of aircraft, missile-packed escorts, entire sections of ocean dominated by the American Navy. But concentrating carriers in one region creates a dangerous problem somewhere else: absence. Because while attention focused on the Middle East, the Indo-Pacific started looking dangerously thin. One carrier covering the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, Korea, and huge stretches of the Pacific almost alone, and carriers cannot teleport. That's the part most people forget. Even moving at full speed, a carrier fall strike group still needs days, sometimes weeks, to cross from one side of the world to another. Oceans are simply too large, which means if conflict erupts elsewhere, the response time becomes terrifyingly slow. And ironically, scenarios like these are exactly why the US has the 11 carrier requirement. The whole system was built around something called the rule of thirds, a simple and yet effective way of properly deploying the carriers. 1/3 of carriers deployed, 1/3 preparing to deploy, 1/3 in maintenance. It was a perfect execution on paper, but in reality, it doesn't work like that. Deployments became longer, maintenance delays piled up, shipyards became overcrowded, and then another problem appeared. Not all carriers are equal anymore. Most of the fleet still belongs to the Nimitz class, ships designed during the Cold War. Their reactors were revolutionary in the 1970s, producing enough power for steam catapults and older radar systems. But modern naval warfare is becoming increasingly dependent on electricity. The Ford class changed that completely. Electromagnetic launch systems, advanced radar arrays, future laser weapons, electronic warfare systems. Modern carriers are pushing for technological advancement, and older carriers are reaching their limit, becoming relics. Think of it like this: trying to run a modern gaming PC using electrical wiring from decades ago. The machine still works until demand spikes. Then suddenly, the limitations become visible. That is the hidden weakness inside America's carrier fleet. The ships still look terrifying from the outside, but on the inside they are old school, and upgrading them isn't easy, and definitely not cheap. You cannot simply redesign a 100,000-ton nuclear supercarrier built half a century ago, which is where this entire story changes. At first, the problem looks political, maybe financial, but the deeper truth is far more complicated. The supercarrier itself may be becoming too expensive, too slow, and too demanding to sustain efficiently. A single Ford-class carrier costs over $13 billion to build, and this takes nearly a decade. And suddenly, the number 11 starts feeling less like military strength and more like a scarecrow to intimidate other world powers. Because the world doesn't wait for the fleet to adapt. Threats move faster, crises pile up, maintenance takes ages. Construction grows slower, every deployment burns through the fleet even harder. And that leaves the Navy trapped in a brutal cycle with no painless solution. Deploying carriers becomes harder, and they wear out faster. Pull them back, and global deterrence weakens. Build more, and you wait a decade. Every solution creates another problem, and that may be the most dangerous reality of all. The United States does not hide the real carrier count through secrecy. It hides it through definitions. The numbers survives because the counting system survives. But once you stop counting paperwork and start counting deployable combat power, the picture changes dramatically. The The law still says 11. The media still says 11. The Navy still says 11. But the ocean does not care about legal definitions. Neither does reality. And that leaves one final question hanging over the entire fleet. If maintaining 11 carriers already requires exhausting crews, stretching deployments, delaying maintenance, and relying on rusty metals from the past, what happens 10 years from now? Because the next war will not pause for dry dock schedules. And the most unsettling part? The Navy already knows it.